Hey everyone, and welcome back to Esther ST. I hope that you are doing very well. And Happy New Year. I believe this is our first video that we are doing in 2025 together. And our topic actually today is about the wedding preparation. And we wanted to give some advice and some help and support to those who are getting married this year and those who are desiring to get married and what they should expect when it comes to planning a wedding. So, without further ado, I'm just going to ask a few questions to my husband and we'll converse. And we want to give our own perspectives as to what we believe planning a wedding should consist of in terms of pricing and other aspects to include. What did you enjoy about your process of planning our wedding? And why do you think it's important to make sure that you plan in wisdom? And when I'm referring to wisdom, it's about how much things cost because we know that weddings are not cheap in today's society. So I'll let you take over.
Okay, so what did I enjoy about the planning process? So I am of the persuasion that different people like different things in terms of their preparation for their wedding and for their marriage. So some people really enjoy the planning process. So like they love, oh, let's go to this vendor and find out what sort of foods they make, or like the different flowers or different dresses or different sweets or whatever options. So some people really like that, or planning, oh, we're going to be in this particular place, so going to the venues. For myself, I enjoyed some of those aspects, but I recognize for myself, instead of the planning stage, I really looked forward to more what the planning was for. So I looked forward to like when the preparations were done, knowing that, okay, yeah, we've got our caterers, we found our venue, we've got our outfits, and we've got our DJ and like our camera, photography. So like having all of those things like sorted and planned, that's what I enjoyed the most in terms of like, all right, it's all done. So like now I'm looking forward to like actually when the time comes and then all of these things are being executed. That's probably what I'd say I enjoyed the most for the planning stages. In terms of advice for budget, I'd say it's important to have in mind what you are actually spending and think about the reason why you're spending. So again, we've learned everybody's different. So the dynamic for everybody's wedding is also different in the sense that different people value different things. So for some people, they really value having the greatest photographer possible. Someone else might be like, oh, I really want memories to be made. So I really want to have a videographer, and that's really important to them because they want to be able to look back at their wedding in the future in like the full day. Oh, you're hearing our child. So if that happens, please forgive him. He is only young. Share some grace for us. But yeah, the fact that people want different things. Some people, it's all about the food. For some people, it's like, I really want to have live music over a DJ. So in terms of keeping to a budget or thinking about a budget, I'd say it's very important, definitely, to have a budget in mindset and to keep track of what it is that you're spending and on what and why. So we've learned that everybody has different values as to what they want for a wedding. For some people, the most important thing is like the photography. So it's like they want to make sure that the photos come out as impeccable as possible. So they're willing to go all out in terms of the photographer that they find. For some people, it might be videography. It might be like, oh, we want to be able to look back on our day and see the whole day unfold in the future. So they're willing to spend quite a lot on that. For some people, it's about the food, in particular caterers. For some, it might be a specific venue. So we hear this one quite often that particularly a lot of ladies have in mind a very particular venue that they've thought about for maybe years, maybe even decades, for where they want to have their wedding. So for some, they're willing to put as much of their budget on that. The reality is that everybody values something different. So you need to think about when the advice that I think about for myself is when you look back on your wedding day in 5, 10, 50 years time, what are the elements that you're actually going to remember? And the ones that you are, that's what you should be willing to spend the most money on. So a trap, I guess it's a trap, but something that a lot of people fall into is the reality of like everything must be perfect on the day. So I need to spend so much time and energy on all these individual details. What do I mean by that? decorations and decor are very, very nice. There are certain things that people focus on thinking that everybody's going to think about them, when in reality, no one will. So, certain chairs that you sit on and the decorations on the chairs, yeah, on the day they look really nice. Or a certain floor, particular color might look really nice. But then most of your guests and most people might not think about it like maybe like a minute after they've seen the venue. That's it. They don't even think about it again. Whereas for you, as the people planning the wedding, you might think like, oh, it has to be like this specific color because it matches this particular dress. It's like, it's not as big a deal as you might think it is, because like in 5 years time, when you're looking back at your wedding, you might not even remember the ordeal that you went through in terms of like deciding like this particular piece for like what the chair looks like behind you, or the type of chair you're sitting on, or the particular color of the table dressing. So there's certain things, at least from my own perspective, that the things which you will look back on and remember fondly in the future when you think about your wedding, those are the things in which you should spend more of your budget on, rather than thinking like you have to spend a lot of money on every individual element, which most people won't even think about once the day is over, or even before then, once they've seen it for the first time. It's like, oh yeah, this looks nice, and then they won't think about, oh yeah, this cup holder matches that person's dress over there, or something like that. So yeah, place your finances on the things that you will value the most, and then where possible, try not to go over budget. But much easier said than done. But I'm sure we'll talk about that in a bit.
Definitely. No, thank you so much, Paul, for that. And two things came to me. Number one is the culture, because of course, everyone's culture is different. So every culture is required to have a specific wedding. So for example, for Nigerians, we tend to have traditional and a white wedding. But I'm mindful that there are some other cultures that don't do traditional, they just do the white wedding. So of course, having two weddings, yes, it may sound like it's expensive, but there is wisdom applied in order to have a successful wedding in accordance to your budget. And one of the things I wanted to bring up was the fact that we had our white wedding in the same venue. And nowadays, I think it's becoming the norm that people want to just do everything in one venue, one location, where people can just park their car and stay there for the whole duration of the wedding. My previous years, when I used to go to a lot of weddings, it would be going to the venue where the church blessing will be, and then driving all the way to the reception. Some distances can be 40 minutes, some an hour, some 10 minutes. Again, it's all down to budget. And I really believe that it's important that we are truthful to ourselves as to how much we can actually spend on our wedding. If you have support and you've got your family and your friends that can contribute, it does save a lot. But also recommendations from friends that have also been married before is really useful. So for example, for me, my photographer, one of our good friends in fact, gave me a list of different vendors at the time when I was engaged, and that was really helpful. So I was able to contact them to find out their prices and just to make sure that I can build a relationship with them to ensure that we're both on the same level. But other than that, I believe it's important to stick to a budget. Do your research, definitely go for viewings. I still remember the times where we would go for venue viewings and they were really great. But we knew that in the grand scheme of things, we have to be very sincere. Is this something that we want to spend a lot of money on? And of course, the season that you get married varies. So if you're getting married in spring, summer, we know that it's going to be very expensive. But if you're looking to get married in the autumn or the winter period, then it's more or less likely to be a bit reasonable. But I think now, weddings even in March are becoming expensive now, from like March to October, and maybe a touch of November as well, because of what's going on in the economy.
It's all about the seasons. So yeah, one of the other factors to consider is choosing when you want to get married. Again, it comes down to like why. So again, down to the value in terms of what I spoke about earlier. Obviously, there's some people who's like, yeah, the nicest time to have a wedding is definitely in the summer when it's like blue skies. By God's grace, in this country, we don't always get that, or it's warm. But with that comes a additional cost. So sometimes you have to really, it's beneficial for you and your partner when you're deciding to really weigh up, is getting married in peak season really, really that important to you? Or is it that you could take it, but you could leave it? the reason I say that, so when we were doing our research for our wedding, we were discovering that, oh yeah, you could find a really nice venue that you really liked. And then it's like, okay, you want to get married in like the peak season, which tends to be maybe like May to, yeah, like September time now. You could be some of it could be like 5 digit, 10,000, 18, 20, 30,000, just for dry hire, just to hire the space. So no catering. You get the tables, but maybe no cutlery. Just for the space, for the however many hours, 12 hours maybe. But then if you think, actually, you can get the same venue just in like the low peak season. So maybe like between like when it's winter months, so like November to maybe like February time. And it could cost you the same venue, the same space, can cost you like 50, 60, 70% less. You can get the same venue for like maybe like 5,000, 8,000. And then when you think, okay, just by changing month, like maybe like just like 1 month later. So say you plan to get like married in like September, just by like maybe delaying it by like 30 days or 30 to 60 days, so like 2 months, you could be saving something like 10, 12, 13,000 pounds just from the venue, which you can then use for everything else that you're wanting to get married for. So definitely thinking about when you want to get married is a factor. And also a bit of encouragement in terms of like those who maybe are considering maybe like a winter wedding or would dismiss a winter wedding. What I would say is, even though like, yeah, sometimes the summer vibe looks really nice for the photos, sometimes people can think like, oh, I don't want a winter wedding because like all of my photos I look cold. In all the photos will look cold. But let me give you this piece of advice. In reality, the photos do not portray the temperature. So when you get your wedding photos, you will not be able to tell whether you were boiling hot unless you're really sweating, or that you're freezing cold. All you'll see is, oh, I looked great, or my wife or my husband looked great, or people looked great at this wedding, and we're having a good time. Because most weddings are generally indoors, and even the outdoor ones, there's still like elements which might be indoors, unless it's like deliberately and purposely all outdoors summertime. But yeah, in your photos, you're not able to tell that the weather was bad. So let that be an encouragement to you. Don't dismiss the possibility of like an autumn or winter wedding, thinking that, oh, it's because I might feel like really cold or my guests might feel really cold, when most of it will be indoors. And then even the photos that you do end up taking outside, it won't come across in the photos that you're shivering, you're freezing. So
that's actually a good point. And what also came to me is alternatively destination weddings for people who may not want to have a winter wedding. So from what I've heard, that most likely destination weddings are relatively cheaper than doing it in the UK. But again, I think it depends on how many people attend. And that's another thing, knowing your head count. Your head count can determine how much your wedding will cost. Some people, they have intimate weddings where it's less than 30 people. Other people have really grand weddings where it could be 300 plus. It just depends on the vision of your wedding. But ultimately, as my husband said, the key is, what is the purpose? Apart from the wedding, where is this going? Because you also need to think about the costs after the wedding is done. A house, your honeymoon, really settling down, starting your life together. It's really unfortunate that sometimes the pressure to perform or to spend so much to let people know that we've arrived can become so demanding that you feel like you need to keep up. But in the grand scheme of things, when we are alone, we'll sit down and say, why did I spend so much on this? Or what made me spend so much on that? But again, it's also about the experiences and what you want to remember. As I was sharing with you today, it's about not necessarily what they spend, but why they spend it. You want to spend X amount of money on the decor because of X, Y, Z. You want the pictures to be seen in it. Or catering, for example. Some people, they spend more on catering than decor because they know that the food is the most important part of a wedding. And I personally do agree. The food has to be on point. When you're going to a wedding, your belly's rumbling, the canapes, the mains, the desserts. Let's be sincere, you want to have a good time. And that's one thing that we were discussing as well. When we were planning our wedding, for certain amounts per head, they were quite pricey. And when we times it by the number of people that we were inviting, We just thought, this is not even the decor or the DJ or the videographer. So we just had to be sincere with ourselves and ask, when we finish the wedding, we don't want to look back and feel like we've gone over our limits. And that's something that we want to encourage you, is please don't feel the need to go over your limit. I really honor people who are genuine and just say, look, this is what I can afford. You can make the hall nice by hiring decor, or alternatively, you can get referrals. I really believe a lot of help has been given to us by referrals. Some of them have been through catering companies, referring other vendors, relative to trying to do it all by yourself and finding out that you don't know what this person charges. And remember, people are charging now to cover their costs for travel. So you might book someone in Essex and your wedding is going to be in Birmingham. You have to consider that person's travel from Essex to Birmingham. You have to consider the fact that you're covering their cost to come to you because it's a service. But I know at the same time, depending on the vision you have for your wedding and what you're looking at, and I think it also depends on how long one has waited. I think that's something to really take into account, because when you wait long, or if you feel like this is now your time and you know you've waited, you've been patient, you definitely want to go all out for your wedding. But again, it comes down to, how much do you have? That's really the important question to ask, and to be sincere about it. Be real. How much do you have? What can you afford? Could you do your traditional and white wedding together? I've seen that quite commonly nowadays, that people are doing that, and it saves a lot of money. But yeah, is there anything else that you would like to contribute regarding that? Like joint weddings, or just having a white wedding and a civil wedding alone, or doing a destination abroad? Like, what would you say is more feasible at this current moment in time?
Mm, the answer will differ depending on your cultural background and what it is that you're actually wanting, realistically.
Mm.
In one sense, you can say that you can't judge everybody the same in terms of like the decisions that they make for their weddings. But there's two principles which I fervently believe. One is that weddings are made for marriages. Marriages are not made for weddings. Meaning that we have a wedding because we're getting married. We don't get married so that we can have a wedding. In our culture, in modern times, definitely, because of various reasons, people become glamorized with the aspects of weddings, as in like the wedding has to be X, Y, Z, whilst neglecting the aspect of, wait, why is the wedding being held? It's because two people are getting married. So there should be a element of focus on, yeah, we want the wedding day to be great, but we want the marriage to be greater. So there's an element of, you must be thinking forward past the wedding day. You shouldn't have like all your expectations on the wedding day itself being like the highest peak in your life, and then afterwards you're like, oh yeah, now we're just married, now I'm just living. But I remember the wedding though was excellent. Of course, we want our weddings to be as great as possible, but the purpose of the wedding is to celebrate love and the union of husband and wife. It is not just to have like a big party and then afterwards in a couple of years' time, like, oh yeah, we're just going to do it again and again and again without building a sustained marriage. The second principle that I hold truly is that you can have a wedding on any budget, and with any budget at all is possible. You can have a wedding for like £1,000. You can have a wedding for £10,000. You can have a wedding for £100,000 or £1,000,000. Realistically, you can have a budget for, and you have a wedding for any budget that you set. Now, of course, the larger your budget, more often than not, the more you have flexibility in terms of like what you can include, and you can include more aspects that maybe are really valuable to you. But if what's really valuable to you is the reality, like, actually no, it's like I'm getting married to my partner, and what I really want is, I just want to have a time celebrating with my family and close loved ones. I having some good food, and then like I want to have like the greatest honeymoon possible. It's like, yeah, if that's what you value, then you don't need to spend the excess money on, I don't know, hiring like a really big hall, or hiring this incredibly fancy caterer, or hiring this incredible band, or whatever it happens to be. It could be like, yeah, you just want to have like a great service, like perhaps in your church or with like those that are close to you that you love, and then afterwards have like a really nice meal. Maybe hire like a caterer, or some friends might make, some family might make food for you, and then be like, cool, and like we're gonna use all this money to put on a deposit for our house, or we're gonna go on like this unbelievable honeymoon that like maybe we'll take like 2 months and go to like the other side of the world and whatever. But at the same time, if you have like 50,000 or 100,000 pounds, it's like you want to use all of this money for the wedding, feel free to do so. The other piece of advice, I know I said two, but three, it's actually three, is where possible, try not to go into debt to pay for your wedding. The last thing you want to do is like you've had this amazing experience, you've had all the things that you could ever have wanted for your celebration, and then when it's all done, and then you're beginning your married life together as husband and wife, then you're then thinking about, oh, but now we gotta like pay back all of these loans that we've taken out, or how are we gonna pay for this, or how are we gonna survive, or where are we gonna live? Have we got enough for rent? Have we got somewhere that we're living after? The last thing you really want to do is be taking out like excessive debt to celebrate one day. Because when you think about it, in our desires, it sounds good, but in reality, it's like wisdom dictates. Should you really? It's like, should we go into mass debt just to celebrate one single day?
Although that one single day is very valuable.
It's a very valuable day. But should we go into like crippling debt to celebrate this one day and then have to be like almost suffering hard after that just to pay it back? Or be like, you know what, let's go like within our means and just like whatever we can afford within our means, that's what we go for. And then after that, you've had your wedding, you're married, but then you're in minimal or no debt at all. But yeah, in reality, like you don't want to be in debt where possible, but obviously everybody might have a slightly different opinion or slightly different view. And of course, it might be that you might have to like, you might be able to cover like 95% of your wedding is on like by you've saved up and you've worked and people made donations, and it might be like, oh yeah, just like this one little thing, yeah, then maybe then it might be fine for you guys to do. But it's like, say like 50, 60%, 80% of your wedding is paid for by taking out like huge loans. Then it's like there's a proverb of like cutting your cutting the cloth or your coat according to your size. Yeah. It's like you don't want to go over your means to then have to like suffer later or go through like unnecessary hardship later for the sake of, I don't know, maybe like appearing to have this glam wedding to appease like some of your friends or to appease people who follow you that you will never meet in your life, and vice versa, that you've never met in your life. So it's like, yeah, don't go overboard where necessary, but at the same time, it's supposed to be an enjoyable day. So yeah, do things which, as I said before, which when you look back on your wedding are the things you are actually going to value and the things you are actually going to remember, as opposed to like, oh, I need to have this specific plant because this person had this specific plant. Or I need to have, I don't know, this venue because this person had this specific venue. And it's like, I want to show them that, yeah, we can afford it and I can have my wedding. It's like,
I think that's a big one in our generation, particularly for the millennials, and especially on Instagram. You know, we see a lot of aesthetics and the way things look. Oh, I want to get married in this particular venue because a lot of people go there. And at times we might have to overwork just to cover costs, but we're burnt out. You know, we can't even have time to celebrate and just enjoy each other. Our minds are focused on the wedding. And another thing as well that I wanted to add on is support from loved ones and family. Of course, there are some that have support all the way through. There are some that may not have any support at all. So again, it's really about being true to yourself and understanding what can you actually afford. Nowadays, people even tend to do their weddings they will hire a restaurant and have the reception there. And they'll just have the church part in their church. And that's also fine as well. But it just depends on the vision that you have. But ultimately, as my husband said, after the wedding is done, what do you have left? It's very important. You don't want to start your marriage in debt. You don't want to start your marriage feeling that, why did we spend this? What were we thinking? And we shouldn't allow culture in particular to pressurize us to doing certain things. I know it's important. We respect and honor our cultures. but we also need to realize that there's a limit for everything in life. And we need to ensure that what we have will sustain us, not only just for that one day, but beyond as well.
Because imagine this: you had a big wedding, and you've got all your gifts and contributions from your family and friends, loved ones. For like, this is the start of your new married life, and then literally all of your gift contributions you have to use to pay off part of your wedding, and it's like you're starting from not even zero, below. You're starting from minus. It's like realistically, nobody would want that, but hey, that's just my little 2 pence. But yeah.
That is serious. It is. And I think as well, it just depends on, again, I see it as how long, not necessarily how long have you waited, but to an extent that does play a big role, because people believe that the longer you've waited, the more you're able to plan and prepare your wedding in advance. But for those who may feel like they don't have time or they're rushing, they just want to get it out of the way and just have a good wedding with a couple of friends and family members, and that's it. But I always believe that weddings should be memorable. They shouldn't be rushed. Even if you were to plan a wedding within a year. We planned our wedding within a year, didn't we?
Yeah.
But it didn't feel like it was rushed because we had our loved ones, family, friends to support us, which really was a massive blessing to us as well, alongside my husband doing other things to build up where we are today. But I know that there are some people that may not have that support, and I understand. But at the same time, we do need to be true to ourselves and how much. Like for myself, running a business, I was very mindful of how much I wanted to spend, not just for the business sake, but also for my future. Coming into marriage, I want to know that we've got enough to sustain us for the years ahead. And that was something that I'm really grateful that, we both planned. In terms of our honeymoon, we were able to do our research. My husband did the best research to find our honeymoon, and it was gorgeous. And for the fact that he thought about that, even in between the stages of planning the wedding, is really important. Maybe there might be some who may not even think about the honeymoon because they're so fixated on their envisioning of the wedding. And you never want to forget that after the wedding, you've got the honeymoon for those who want to go straight away. I genuinely thought we were going to go at least a couple of weeks later, but hubby wanted to go straight away. So I thought, you know what, let me follow suit and let's go straight away. And I'm really happy that we did.
Yeah. If you're in between minds as to whether to go somewhere straight away or to be like, oh, you know what, let's save up and then like maybe go on a bigger one later. My advice would be, even if you decide to go on a bigger one later, still choose to go even on a small one, even if it's just like for like 3 days. Go away immediately. Like I say immediately, like within the first couple of days after the wedding. Like choose to have some actual detox time after the wedding, where it's just you and your now spouse, because it allows for detox. You're finally at a point where you're no longer doing things to plan. Where for many, it's a very stressful period. The actual wedding day itself can be a blur, and it's just like lots of smiling. It's like you need your face to relax from all the smiling. You might not have eaten much or drunk much because of all the excitement, but you need time to actually unwind away from like your everyday environment. So even if like your plan is to we want to save up to go to like an even bigger honeymoon somewhere far away or whatever, like still choose to have like set some time to go away, almost like within the first week of when you're actually married as well. Definitely. And I also wanted to say to all my people who are currently single or are in a relationship already, but they know that they want to get married, even at the state where you are now, begin saving towards your marriage. Don't wait until you get engaged to then think like, now I have to start thinking about saving towards this wedding. You can start saving now. You can start saving from a period of like I know that I want this in my life, and it might not be here now, but by God's grace, it's going to come at some point. So when the time does come, I want to say like, okay, we have stuff that we can actually contribute already towards the wedding and start paying for things, as opposed to like, oh, I got to wait until I'm engaged, and then it's like, okay, the wedding was going to cost £35,000. Like, oh, we haven't got that much now. It's going to take us a few years to then save. Then you're just pushing the time away until you can actually save up enough to then get married to have the wedding you want. So like even now, if you're single and you're watching this video, even if you're really young, like a teenager, like start, even if it's not like you're saving all your money, like start setting aside a portion. Like actually, this is going to be for my wedding in the future, whenever it's to come, by God's grace. And so, like, you have a sense of ownership. Like, yeah, you're already doing your part, preparing to have your wedding and preparing for married life. You don't want to start off on the back foot every time where it's like, okay, only once I reach this stage, that's when I start thinking about the things for this stage. So, like, when we're single, we're thinking about, okay, being in a relationship, and we try to prepare for that where possible. And when we're in a relationship, many of us start thinking like, okay, I want to prepare for like a time where I'm engaged, and when we're engaged, preparing for marriage. It isn't that we wait till we're in a relationship to then start thinking about relationship things, and it isn't that we wait until we're in. Normally, we don't always wait until we're engaged to start thinking about engaged things. And it isn't only when we're at the marriage stage we start thinking about marriage things. No, we start thinking about and preparing for some of these things in the stage before. And by God's grace, God's given us wisdom. There's things that we can do, even if we don't see the goal in sight or the end point in sight. We can know that this is where we want to reach, so we can start preparing for it in the now. So that would be my other piece of advice to my fellow brothers and sisters. So.
Definitely. And also just be inspired that you can still have the wedding that you desire, but it all comes down to planning, and planning with wisdom. So again, literally utilizing all the resources around you, whether that is referrals, people that you've seen in previous weddings. I've had people in mind that I've wanted to use for my wedding, but now that we're in a new season, it's been given to me. So people would recommend, oh, Esther, use this person or use that person. And it made the process so easier. So most of our vendors were either referrals or direct research. And it's just been such a great experience. I mean, planning the wedding for me, personally, I did enjoy it. There were some aspects that I thought, okay, in terms of numbers, I was quite mindful that, of course, we need to ensure that the number of people that we're inviting equates to the number of food that we're also purchasing. So, yeah. So to wrap up, we've also got our latest 8th book, The Cost of Intentional Marriage. And this book, honestly, if I was a single woman or I'm an engaged woman, I would get this book for myself. But this book really covers the importance of being intentional about your marriage. And it covers things about how you can build together, because indeed it is a partnership. And when you think about planning a wedding, you're partnering with your husband or your wife to be to plan that wedding well, but you're also planning for your marriage. So we really want to encourage you, for those who haven't yet got a copy, and thank you to those who have purchased and left reviews. You are welcome to get a signed copy from us on the authenticworth.com website, or alternatively, you can buy your copy on Amazon and other online book retailers as well. And we really hope that you will be encouraged as you take the time to read our experiences and journey into marriage. We want to take this opportunity to thank you so much for listening to this video. We really hope that it's been useful and it's giving you a bit of a perspective as to how you can plan a wedding in wisdom. Of course, we can't give a specific budget because everyone's budgeting vision is different. Some people may want to spend 30K, some people may want to spend 10K. What matters ultimately is that your marriage is strong.
Or less. You can spend £500 and still get married. Civil wedding, have your guests there, go to Weatherspoons or Miller and Carter, somewhere fairly fancy. ZZ's, call it a day.
Yeah.
Party at home. Yeah. Any budget. Any budget you can have an actual wedding. Legitimately.
Yeah. It's just about, again, envisioning what you want for your wedding day. If that's what you want, if you want to do your wedding at a restaurant, if you want to do even in your own home, for those of you who may have a really big garden, because I know people that do it in their home because their house is so big and it's great. But if you really want the grand experience of going elsewhere, or even having wedding planners and wedding coordination, which I know we didn't really discuss, but that is also an added cost. So if you think about it, it's better to get a package of someone who can do wedding coordination alongside the venue hire, rather than hiring the venue separately, whether it's dry hire, and then having to outsource a wedding planner or a wedding coordinator. Because it really also depends on the people that you choose. So your bridesmaids, for example, how experienced are they? Have they supported other brides in the past? And that's why it's really important to know who you're choosing when it comes to your bridal party. We've had such great support with our bridal party, haven't we?
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah. So that's something that we can look back on and say, yeah, in a way they were doing their part. And yes, it's easy to say, but they're there to serve you. It's true, but they're also there to have fun as well. And I really believe that everyone did. But yes, without further ado, are there any other questions or any other contributions that you would like to give to the community? And for the community, are there any other specific topics that you would like us to discuss? And if you would like to see my husband and I back on the channel, you know what to do. Leave your comments below.
I wouldn't say I've got any other verbal words. Just, be encouraged that weddings are, one, they are possible, even in the current climate in which we live in. Sometimes it can be hard to visualize the reality of like, oh, I've got all these other costs in life. Can I really pay for a wedding? Like, yeah, realistically you can. As I said before, you can have a wedding realistically for any budget you set. You can have almost any budget. I'm being a little bit tongue-in-cheek. Like, you can't have a wedding for £1, but you can have a wedding for like 500, £1,000. Realistically, you can. Up to however many millions that you're willing to spend, realistically. A sense of preparation can be needed at whatever stage you happen to be at. Don't wait until like, oh, now that we're engaged, now we need to start thinking about how we're going to plan to prepare for this wedding or finance wedding. Start now. Start now. Set aside a portion of like your earnings. Be like, this is going to be for the future wedding. And be encouraged that, godly marriages and weddings are occurring all the time.
Yes.
And then hold the reality that as much as you are preparing for your wedding, remember that the wedding day is built for marriage. Marriages are not created or built for a wedding day. So remember, in light of all of the preparation for your wedding, remember that it's for the life after your wedding that you're actually building for and celebrating in advance with the wedding day.
Amazing. Oh, without further ado, thank you so much. Thank you to my husband, and thank you also to our precious baby who now needs our attention. But we just want to say thank you so much to those who have listened. And again, we look forward to seeing you in our upcoming video. Take care and all the best. Bye.